You've driven past a truck stop at 3 a.m. You've seen it from the highway, the lights blazing against a dark sky. The parking lot full of trucks, sitting completely still with their engines running. Figures moving in and out of a building that has no logical reason to be this busy at this hour. And your brain filed it the same way most people do. Truckers sleeping, a gas station that never closes, probably a sad diner with bad coffee. Nothing important. That's the obvious answer. And it's wrong, not just incomplete. Structurally, it fails in a way that becomes genuinely strange the moment you start pulling at the edges of it. Because what is actually happening inside a truck stop at 3 a.m. involves federal law enforcement clocks, a weight compliance system timed to government inspection windows, real-time logistics, coordination for cargo that will be on your grocery store shelf by tomorrow afternoon, and a layer of federally mandated human safety observation that most truck stop employees do not lead with when they describe their job. Everything you put in your refrigerator this week passed through this system. The medicine at your pharmacy, the package arriving at your door tomorrow. All of it moved through what you thought was just a place to get diesel and a questionable breakfast sandwich. By the end of this, you will understand exactly what you were looking at, and you will never drive past one of those parking lots the same way again. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. The obvious answer is that those trucks are parked because the drivers are tired and chose to stop. That's partially right. But the word chose is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because the drivers in that parking lot at 3 a.m. did not exactly choose to be there. They were put there by a federal countdown, and they cannot legally leave until it expires. Not for any reason, not for any urgency, not for any amount of money waiting at the other end. Here is the framework. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration limits commercial truck drivers to 11 hours of driving within any given 14-hour window. After those 11 hours are used up, the driver is required to take a minimum 10-hour off-duty period before they can move the truck again. This is not a guideline. It is a federal regulation encoded as law under 49 CFR, Part 395, and since December 2017, it has been enforced by hardware. That hardware is the electronic logging device, the ELD. Every commercial truck operating in interstate commerce was required to have one installed by the end of 2017. The ELD connects directly to the truck's engine control module and records every minute of drive time automatically. It cannot be paused. It cannot be edited after the fact without generating an audit flag that is visible to federal inspectors. The paper logbook, which drivers could and did falsify, and which led to decades of drivers running illegal hours, is gone. The black box replaced it, and the black box talks to the FMCSA database in real time. So what you're looking at in that parking lot is not a choice. It is a federal compliance window. Those trucks are legally prohibited from moving. The drivers are not sleeping because they want to. They are sleeping because the ELD has told the federal government exactly how many hours they have been driving, and the math says they do not move again for another 6 hours. That changes the picture already. But here's what that explanation does not account for. If everyone in that parking lot is legally mandated to be stationary, why does the place look like it is running at full operational capacity? Why are people walking around? Why are there transactions happening at fuel islands at 3 a.m.? What is everyone actually doing? Because here is what the driver's arresting explanation completely misses. The trucks have to be there. But the truck stop itself is running a second operation that has nothing to do with rest. And it is timed to something most drivers think about before they fall asleep. The people moving around that parking lot at 3 a.m. are doing something very specific. Some of them are fueling. A commercial high-flow diesel pump dispenses at roughly 40 or more gallons per minute, which means filling a 150-gallon tank takes about 4 minutes. That is not remarkable. What is remarkable is why they are fueling at 3 a.m. specifically, and what they are doing immediately before or after. They are stopping at the CAT scale. Federal law sets a hard ceiling for gross vehicle weight on the interstate highway system, 80,000 pounds. That limit, established alongside the interstate highway system itself by the Federal Highway Act of 1956, applies to the combined weight of the truck, the trailer, and everything inside it. A single axle is capped at 20,000 pounds. A tandem axle at 34,000 pounds. Exceed those numbers, and you are, in the legal sense, a moving violation the moment you roll onto a federal highway. The CAT scale solves this before it becomes a problem. Certified automated truck scales are at approximately 2,000 locations across North America, almost all at truck stops. Weighing costs about $12. You pull onto the platform, the certified scale gives you a weight ticket, and you have a documented legal record that your truck was compliant at this location at this time. And if a state weigh station flags you later, that ticket is your evidence. But here's the part most people outside trucking have never thought about. State weigh stations don't operate continuously. Many of them are closed overnight. Some are closed on weekends. Drivers know the operating hours of the weigh stations on their routes the way a delivery driver knows traffic patterns. It's operational knowledge. A driver who scales at 3 a.m., confirms compliance, and departs at 4 a.m. may pass a weigh station that won't open for another 3 hours. This is not a loophole. It is the system operating exactly as designed. There is also a system called Pre-Pass, a transponder-based weigh-in-motion bypass program used by nearly all major carriers. Sensors embedded in the highway pavement weigh the truck at highway speed before it reaches the weigh station. If the truck is compliant and the carrier's safety record is clean, a green light activates and the driver bypasses the station entirely without stopping. Approximately 98% of pre-pass enrolled trucks get the green light. So when you look at that truck stop at 3 a.m., you're not looking at random activity. You're looking at a compliance ecosystem. Drivers are completing their legal rest countdown, fueling to the right weight, getting certified, and staging for a departure window calculated against the enforcement infrastructure on their route. But weight and fuel and rest compliance still do not explain what is happening inside that building at that specific hour, because a significant portion of what is being coordinated at 3 a.m. in that diner, at those tables, on those phones, has nothing to do with the trucks that are currently parked. It has everything to do with the trucks that are going to leave in 4 hours and what they are going to be carrying. Inside the restaurant at 3 a.m., there are drivers who are not sleeping, laptops open, phones to ears, conversations that run the same tone as a trading floor, not loud, but focused, because there is money on the table and a window closing. These drivers are in a sleeper berth rest period, which under FMCSA rules allows limited non-driving activity. What they are doing is managing their next load, long-haul freight runs on delivery windows, not ranges, windows. A load of produce picked up at a distribution center in California has a receiving appointment at a grocery chain's regional hub in Ohio at 6 a.m. on Thursday. Not 6 to 9 a.m., 6 a.m. Miss it by 2 hours, and the dock rejects the load, the driver does not get paid for the full haul, and the produce sits in a trailer while everyone argues about who absorbs the cost. Hit it, and the cold chain stays intact. The distribution center's floor staff are already staged to receive it, and the yogurt is on the shelf before the store opens. This is why dispatchers work overnight. The freight calendar does not have business hours. A driver in a 10-hour rest window that started at 7 p.m. is legal to move again at 5 a.m. The dispatcher calls at 3 a.m., not to wake them, but because the driver is awake anyway, doing this math, and they both need to confirm the routing for the next 600 miles before the electronic logging device, ELD clock, restarts. The truck stop is where this call happens. The table in the diner is the office. But here's what that explanation does not capture. Most of the freight being coordinated at 3 a.m. is relatively forgiving. There is a window of hours before it degrades. There is a subset of cargo, though, that cannot wait. And the truck stop infrastructure built around that cargo is so specialized, so precisely engineered for a single purpose, that when you understand it, you see the whole operation differently. Because the refrigerated trailer parked 3 rows back from the fuel island is not just running its engine to stay cool. It is running a pharmaceutical-grade temperature maintenance operation that is monitored in real time from a dispatch center several states away. Approximately $300 billion of temperature-sensitive goods move through U.S. freight logistics annually. The most consequential category is pharmaceuticals, vaccines, insulin, biologics. These products do not just prefer to stay cold. They require it within tolerances more precise than most home refrigerators can maintain, from the moment they leave the manufacturing facility to the moment they are administered. The FDA standards for pharmaceutical cold chain define specific temperature ranges. Most vaccines must be maintained between 2 degrees Celsius and 8 degrees Celsius, that is 35 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit, without interruption. A single excursion above 8 degrees Celsius, even briefly, can trigger a mandatory investigation and potentially render the entire shipment unusable. On a trailer carrying $200,000 worth of biologics, a failed reefer unit at 2 in the morning is not an inconvenience. It is an emergency with a very short clock. The reefer unit is a self-contained diesel system that operates completely independently of the truck's main engine. It has its own fuel tank, its own controls, its own failure modes. Modern reefer units transmit temperature data via telematics every few minutes to the carrier dispatch system. If the temperature drifts outside the specified range, an automated alert fires to the overnight dispatch team. Here's where the truck stop comes in. A travel center at a major freight corridor junction is not just chosen for its fuel capacity. Its proximity to a 24-hour maintenance bay is part of the route calculation for temperature-sensitive loads. A reefer unit that fails 3 in the morning, 3 miles from a travel center with a maintenance bay on duty, is a manageable problem. A reefer unit that fails in the middle of a state with no service infrastructure is a catastrophic loss. Route planners know the difference. Load coordinators build the stops accordingly. So that refrigerated trailer in the back row is a temperature-controlled pharmaceutical distribution node, wired into a real-time monitoring system, and positioned at a known service point on a certified cold chain route. The driver may be asleep. The system is not sleeping at all. But there is one more layer to what is happening inside that building at 3 a.m. It has nothing to do with freight or compliance or cold chain, and it involves the people who are always there, the employees who staff the counter, issue the shower tokens, and run the kitchen, and what the federal government and state legislatures have specifically asked them to watch for. The Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Transportation have formally designated truck stops as elevated risk locations for human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, because of a combination of factors: 24-hour operation, high volume of transient traffic, cash transactions, and relative distance from routine law enforcement presence. This designation is documented. It shapes federal policy and state law. Truckers Against Trafficking is a nonprofit founded in 2009 in response to this reality. Its mission is to train the people who are always at truck stops, drivers and employees, to recognize the documented indicators of trafficking and report them to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. As of the most recent reporting periods, the organization has trained more than 1.6 million commercial drivers and distribution center employees. Several states have passed legislation requiring truck stop employees to complete this training as a condition of business operation. The indicators are specific and behavioral. A person who does not know what city they are in. Someone whose answers to questions are given by a third party standing beside them. A person with signs of physical distress inconsistent with the context. Someone with no control over their own identification. These are not vague hunches. They are documented patterns codified by law enforcement. translated into training modules, and given to the cashier working the overnight shift. The cashier at 3 a.m. issuing shower tokens is, formally, a trained observer in a federal awareness network. The cook in the back is too. This does not make truck stops sinister. It makes them something far more interesting: a commercial facility simultaneously running freight logistics, federal compliance operations, and a human safety observation network, all at the same time, in the same building, with the same staff. That is a very different picture than a gas station with a diner. This is where all of this actually lands. You pulled into that truck stop at 3 a.m. thinking you were looking at nothing. Trucks waiting, lights on for no reason, a parking lot that forgot to go dark. But what you were actually looking at was a federal rest countdown running in the cab of every one of those trucks, enforced by hardware that reports to a government database in real time and cannot be altered. It was a weight compliance operation timed deliberately to enforcement windows, with certified scale tickets being printed at midnight so that a truck can legally depart at 4 a.m. It was a logistics nerve center where drivers and dispatchers route temperature-sensitive cargo and conversations timed to delivery windows that expire at 6 a.m. in cities 600 miles away. It was a pharmaceutical cold chain node monitoring vaccine temperatures every few minutes from a dispatch center in another time zone, positioned at a known service point on a certified route, because a reefer failure 3 miles from help is survivable, and a reefer failure in the middle of nowhere is not. And it was a building staffed by people who have been formally trained by a federal awareness program to recognize the indicators of human trafficking and report them to a national hotline. That is a truck stop at 3 a.m., not a gas station that forgot to close. An infrastructure node running overlapping, federally interlocked, continuous operations while the rest of the highway sleeps. The insulin at your pharmacy passed through that system. The produce in your refrigerator was routed through a conversation at one of those diner tables. You have been downstream of this your whole life. You just did not have the full picture until right now. And if you think a truck stop is complicated, wait until we get into what happens inside a distribution center at 4 in the morning, because that is where everything those trucks delivered actually gets sorted, scanned, and sent to your door. The system running that building is even stranger than this one.